everyone, welcome to another episode of Handing the Shame Back, a channel dedicated to the adult survivors of child sexual abuse here in New Zealand and globally. We've got a very special show tonight, a panel discussion which is dedicated to the Lake Alice victims. And for those across the world and some of those in New Zealand who don't know, let me just give you a little brief history. Lake Alice Hospital was a self-sufficient rural psychiatric facility. Former patients of the hospital's child and adolescent unit made allegations against them during the 70s, including ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, and the use of paraldehyde injections as a form of punishment. I know it's disgusting. The New Zealand government issued an apology in 2001, paid out a total of 10.7 million to 183 former patients. The facility ran between 1950 and October 1999. Now, there's a lot more to the story, and so please join me in welcoming to the show Malcolm Richards, who is a victim of this. He's here to share where things are at now and also the impact on him. And we also have Neil Harding. Now, he is leading or helping to lead the class action against Dilworth School in New Zealand, who also are culpable for many victims of child sexual abuse on their grounds and at their hands. So, welcome to the show, Malcolm and Neil.
Thank you.
Okay, so Malcolm, just as much or as little as you're comfortable to share, what would you like us to know?
Well, I've been fighting this since I got out of Lake Alice. I've been in this fight for an awful long time. I reported the abuse to police, who threatened me with arrest because they said nothing like this would ever happen in New Zealand. I lived basically like an escaped convict till I found out at I was about 36 that Lake Alice had been closed because I was so afraid of being captured and sent back, because I only got out for a short time at Christmas and was supposed to go back, but I ran away, so I couldn't be sent back.
What year was this, Malcolm?
76. Yeah, when I got out, and yeah, I was 16 then. Yeah, and until I was 32, totally afraid of being captured and put back and killed, because children were and adults were killed in there with ECT. They give you ECT basically anywhere when you misbehave. They had a treatment room, but I got it in one of the cells. But then they'd give you, that was without any anesthetic or anything. And then the 3 times a week you get it with anesthetic in a big ward, and they'd start at the oldest person and they'd work their way around the room towards the children, and you'd know the trolley was coming. And then the odd person, they'd cover up and say, oh, well, he never made it, never mind. Now, whether that person was still just unconscious because you were unconscious for quite a while, or whether they were dead, but other people said they saw bodies carted away in hand carts and stuff. And there was always stories about children that didn't make it, and adults and that getting buried in the out the back in the veggie patch. So, you know, you're always terrified that, you know, every time you're going to get it, that'd be the end of you. So it wasn't just the undescribable pain of ECT, but it was the fear that was your last day. But anyway, once I found out it was closed and there was no chance of going back, and really learned how to use a computer, because I suffered quite a lot of brain damage, and it's been like living with Alzheimer's, whole life, from when I was in Lake Ellis till now. Memories get a little bit harder now with age, but yeah, it's been like, I've got piles and piles of notes and bits and things here, and something will twig my memory. Oh, I've got that somewhere, and I can spend 2 or 3 days looking for a statement someone's made. But yeah, it makes life really difficult, and ACC is just an ongoing battle as well. But yeah, I've carried on and set up a page with Paul to support other survivors, and yeah, well, Paul's in Auckland with close to CCHR, so he got their help. But yeah, it was a bit harder for me and until I'd got to learn computers and got in contact with them, saying, what we were doing was the same. We sort of got together on a lot of things, but yeah, disagreed on a lot of things too. But then Grant West come to New Zealand, and I offered to help him, and he was asking for places to stay when he was collecting signatures for the Royal Commission. I said, well, when he comes to Hawke's Bay, he can stay with me. He said, well, I can't make it over that side of the country. So I got together with him and collected signatures from all around Hawke's Bay and took them to Parliament with him. And that was the hardest thing I've ever done, is talking to so many survivors who would not sign the petition for fear of being identified and taken away, or their children taken away. So, I could have collected 10 times the signatures, but people were just too afraid. And that sort of, that's the first time I've really put myself out in public, and it was a really hard thing to do. But since then, the more I've talked about it, the more it's helped me. And then I've gone on to do help a reporter do a big piece on Lake Ellis, where he's got the whole history of not just Lake Ellis, but lots of other abuse in New Zealand as well. And we did a expo at the Aotearoa Art Gallery. So I went down there for a couple of days and answered people's questions on as much as I could on Lake Ellis, and yeah, we've carried on the fight from there. And of course, there was after that, we finally won my case about 2 years after Paul's at the UN, and the government just said, well, torture wasn't illegal at the time, so we don't have to comply. So we're just waiting for the review of New Zealand in another week's time, and see where we go from there. Try and get a rapporteur to New Zealand to get New Zealand to comply with the ruling and provide us some sort of rehab. I've written so many emails to different ministers, and they all bob it off to the next one saying, no, it's not my job, it's this person's job, and they send me to somebody else, and it's gone round and round. I only went to Geneva because to take a case of torture in New Zealand, you must get the Attorney General's permission, and Chris Finlayson wouldn't do that. So, I heard Paul had gone to Geneva, and I thought, well, why can't I do that too? And with a bit of help from Paul and CCHR, they sorted me the forms I had to fill in, and you've got to exhaust all your domestic remedies before you can proceed to the UN, which I'd done all that because I'd done all these emails to different ministers and gone to the listening service and everything I could do, and tried to take case of torture inside New Zealand. So then they accepted my case, and here we are.
Wow. Well, what strikes me, there's just so much. I'm a little bit in shock, to be honest, Malcolm. First of all, I'm so sorry you had to go through any of that, and your absolute bravery. I'm feeling the fear you would have felt as a child, knowing that trolley was going to hit you. I see we do have Karilyn on board. I will let her in. But just having the experience of that, and yet, hello, Karilyn, welcome. We have, you didn't let that stop you, the impact you've described in terms of the brain damage and the memory loss, and I can even imagine things like confidence or who can you trust. If you'd gone to the police and had them threaten to arrest you, well, that wasn't something I imagine you would want to repeat twice. So
I did repeat that several times, and have several emails from police saying this, we're not reopening the Lake Alice case until, of course, the UN's decision. Then they sort of had to.
Yeah. Just to press pause there. Welcome, Karilyn. I'm Gloria Masters. I'm hosting the discussion. I imagine you and Malcolm have met or know each other through email. No. So yes, no.
Yeah, through the survivors site, but not.
Yeah.
They keep saying like all the Lake Alice survivors got together and decided to make up the same lie, but most of us have never ever met. And even when I met Paul, the first time I met Paul face to face was at the Royal Commission.
Look, you're safe here. You're among. I know you're saying you're a victim, but I'm a survivor. I know Neil is as well. The point is, you should never have to justify anything. To be honest, it's a disgrace. I guess too, Neil, what you're thinking is, as I see you've been observing what Malcolm's been saying, what's your feeling as you've listened to this and thought about what you're trying to perhaps do in the Dilworth space?
Oh, firstly, Malcolm, it's hard to hear your words.
Yes. Yes.
And yeah, I really feel it takes me back to those moments of terror in my own childhood, and I can only imagine how tricky that's been then and now. And I appreciate why you consider yourself a victim and not a survivor. And my experience with, I have 131 survivors in the class action, And I don't know who they all are because some of them are anonymous, and the legal team has put in some barriers, so I don't know who they all are. But the ones I do know, the ones I speak with, as much as we're in the same place, even at the same time, we all had different experiences, different impacts, different effects, and our journey towards healing, towards redress, is very personal, sometimes very lonely.
Yeah.
And I was just gutted, and the other survivors that I speak with, absolutely gutted for the Lake Alice survivors and that ruling of recent ruling of not getting any accountability or justice. And it's given me, and I don't know if this is any consolation, it has given me real determination, even more determination, to take the baton from you and try and achieve something on behalf of Dilworth that, for me, a win for one is a win for all. And we're certainly looking to make changes in this country that show that there's been some really inept or strange decisions by police. And we've experienced that with Dilworth, and things that they say was just normal sadism of the day that does not cross the threshold to be charged. And it's very clear in the 1961 Crimes Act that these things did cross lines. And I really struggle to see, from a justice perspective, how we could fail so badly on so many levels in so many institutions. How New Zealand has some of the lowest prosecution rates in the OECD and some of the highest abuse rates of children. And we're looking, what are we doing as a country? We don't even have mandatory reporting.
No.
So, and just acknowledge your courage and your bravery for doing what you did to get over to Geneva. What a wonderful thing to do, mate.
Incredible, Malcolm, and that's in spite of the impact of all of the ECT you had to suffer. Just moving on to you, Karilyn, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. I know I'm a little bit late.
That's okay. They say save the best for last, so we'll see, shall we?
Yeah, bit of a scare.
Just Karilyn, this is a safe space for you. We're very interested in sharing whatever you're comfortable with about what you experienced at Lake Alice and what you perhaps may like to see happen. Now that it's in the place it is. So I'm just wondering if you're comfortable to share with us.
Don't get me wrong. I understand everybody has a different path that they go down. Mine is to make sure that my kids and my grandkids and any other generation after that don't have to put up with this. We did because everybody would have said to us, oh, you guys had a mental issue. You were put in there for a reason. None of us realistically did have a problem. Yes, we were all test guinea pigs, and unfortunately, we're the ones that are paying for it now. The next generation don't understand because it was all hush-hush. My grandkids look at me and they just are like horrified what we had to go through as kids. Some were really, really young. Some were older, getting into our teens and stuff. But the problem is, some of the ones that were in there have passed away.
Mm.
Where's their standing? Hey, Malcolm.
Well, when it's torture, the redress, if the victim has died, is passed on to the family. Not like normal, just, you know, like the Royal Commission's redress. Redress for torture is different through the UN's process. So if as the UN said, they hardly ever talk to any victims of torture because normally they're dead. But the redress ordered gets passed to the family. So anyone that's been through Lake Alice, their family should get compensated, because as some of the children testified at the Royal Commission, they were affected. I know my children are affected by my behaviour because, you know, I've got all the, when I was given a thing to do for brain injury, you only had to have 5 out of the 20 to qualify as brain injured, and I got 20 out of 20. So,
Oh.
so you know, and some of the things you sometimes you get overwhelmed and you can't take noise, so you know, you say, for God's sake, shut up, you know, and I can't do anything if there's noise in the background. I have to have quiet to function. So, you know, while the children at school, I try and do as much of anything I have to do. So it's quiet, and I've got grandchildren now that we're also looking after. My daughter's goes off to hospital. She's a nurse every day, so looking after her children. So, you know, at least my children have made something of themselves, but still it's affected them. They didn't know, you know, I've been in and out of work all my life, so they've lived in quite a lot of poverty and don't really know what a holiday is, or they don't get things that other kids get, and it's a bit hard on them. And yeah, a lot of children of survivors have suffered well, greatly as well. So the redress should go to them as well, yeah, especially if the survivors passed away.
It's interesting you say that, because it's not often discussed. So I think it's a really good point that you raised, Malcolm. When people look at this, they think of you guys as having emerged through it, you know, to varying degrees of functionality or health or well-being, or for those of you that made it through. And I say that with utmost respect, but what's not often looked at, and I suspect it could be similar with Dilworth, Neil, is that for the children of the survivors or victims, you know, what they've possibly had to endure as well, because we didn't know what we didn't know. And so to have come through and then had our own children, you know, it's reassuring to hear the redress will naturally go to the next generation. What's your thinking, Neil?
Well, we've had the same issue with Dilworth, and a number of the boys that were abused have since committed suicide. So we have addressed that strongly with our redress process and ensuring that the families receive are eligible. But we also know that the effects are intergenerational, and it's not just the triggers that we have, but it's the patterning. You know, the childhood wiring was damaged. So what's our patterning as a parent? You know, how are we supposed to kind of overcome those experiences and be great parents and model parents and do everything right. And a lot of the time you're looking at it and going, well, it's quite simple. All I got to do is the opposite of what I had. But it's difficult, and the effects are definitely intergenerational. And it's taken me a long time to. I'm in my mid-50s now, mid to late 50s, and I'm only just working out who I am now.
Yeah,
it's taken a lot of counselling and a lot of work and a lot of time, trying to work out, am I the same person, or did those traumas and experiences change me? And that's the trouble when it happens to you as a child. You don't know whether you are yourself or you're. For you, Malcolm, obviously it's clear. You know, it's with brain injury, and you're scoring 20 out of 20 on some kind of criteria for brain injury. It's that's tough. That's tough, mate.
yeah. But ACC don't compensate for brain injury from ECT. So, yeah, you can't get any help. You can't get any help through the Brain Injury Trust because you need a proper diagnosis, official diagnosis, and they won't do the scans required in New Zealand.
It feels like every time you try and get needs met, there's a big block wall right in the middle of your path. Who has, Karilyn, from your perspective, who has been there to support you guys through this?
Realistically, no one. You know, as survivors, we probably would back each other more than whether the police, the government, ACC, WINS, whatever. You know, that's the hard thing, because of us being so young, we had no choice. We had no options. And when somebody did make a complaint, it was like, nah, you guys are all shit. And that was the hardest thing, I think. And that's why a lot of us pulled back and went, well, I don't want to be put into a category that I'm not. And I get Malcolm's side of it, because ACC won't help you unless you have like the perfect ground rules. How do you go, this was done at a hospital? Do I not qualify because it was done at a hospital? I was a guinea pig. Yeah, you know, and we've lost so many. Like, I had to put on our page, I think it was Sunday, that another one of our guys had passed away. You know, and we should be communicating with each other more and trying to get everybody's names that have passed away too, like whether they were young, whether they're, 20s, 30s. We should all at least be there for them, and that's the hard thing, because most of us are either probably on a benefit, or I know there's a lot of us that work, but we can't afford to go, oh, we'll go up to Auckland because this is happening. Where do we belong? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you've raised a great point too. Because of where you were and because of behaviour potentially that you had exhibited prior to getting in there and then after getting in there, people decide that you're the wrong ones or the bad ones, or you need to be punished, or it's your fault if. And we know, don't we, that children won't tell or won't talk because they're terrified, but equally they show through behaviour rather than words. And I just wonder what you guys make of that.
Yeah, well, I was put in there because of my behaviour, because I was sexually abused by my headmaster. So I went off the rails. And yeah. So, you know, I wasn't in there because I was mentally ill or anything like that. I was in there because I was rebelling, because I was sexually abused at school by my headmaster, but I couldn't talk to my parents about it because you didn't talk to your parents about anything. You spoke when you were spoken to, and that was that, you know, quite a strict. So who did you just lashed out with actions and beat kids up at school and yeah, just became uncontrollable.
Well, yeah. You had no choice, because the part of you that was off the rails, and that was me as well, Malcolm, is screaming for help. Someone help, someone notice, someone ask, someone try and, you know, understand. Because
we didn't get help, we got punished.
yes.
So we got put in there and punished, got locked in cells. Yeah, it got to the point where I'd hung myself in my cell at Lake Ellis. And what did they do? Didn't give me any help. They cut me down, gave me ECT while I was awake. So every time you scream out for help, you get punished. So yeah, stop screaming out for help. And I buried myself in work and worked 14 plus hours a day, 7 days a week, as much as I could, just so I could sleep, and ended up having a couple of heart attacks. So
Yeah.
yeah. And you know, I fought to get this Royal Commission with a group of others quite hard. King Clearwater and Grant West and Susan DeVoy. And you know, I think, you know, it was the best thing we could get, but the redress they're talking about doesn't work for everybody, because some people went through Lake Ellis and they come out and they've been, you know, able to get a little bit of help and get on track and go to work, get on with life and put it behind them. But others, like myself, have been in and out of work and up and down and in and out of counselling to this day. So the redress has got to be person by person, by what, and supply them with the rehab that each individual person needs. Some don't need any. Some don't want any because it's, you know, a reminder of other things. But everybody is different, and it has to be, and the Royal Commission's redress, although it's taken out of their hands now, it's not going to work that way. It's just a group across the board sort of thing. And yeah.
Huge. Neil, you've been writing some submissions as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I belong to a network of faith-based survivors, and so we're presenting a submission to the United Nations next Monday. We had a preparatory meeting last night, and we'll be doing that with CCHR as well. So just in terms of making change, making these kinds of changes, it's just sad. It's just so sad to hear that there are so many crevasses of so many people that are just voiceless and lost, and no pathway. Everyone's putting up barriers and blocks for them, and it's just appalling. I don't know how to describe it, Malcolm.
Well, so many dealings with so many politicians that all admit they knew what was going on wasn't right, and they still go against sorting it out and doing what's right and covering their backsides. I mean, they used, they sneaked someone leaks back into the country, used Crown lawyers to discredit us and get him off charges years ago when he should have been charged. Crown lawyers should have been for us, the victims, not for the bloody perpetrators. But, you know, the government's done everything, and not just one party, all of them are guilty. There's not one party that's not, because they all know about it. Even though ACT and the Greens were not even in existence at the time, they know about it now, and they have not once stood up in Parliament and said, why are we not sorting this out? They've won cases at the UN, what's going, you know? Not one of them have stood up. Not one of them will meet with me. Not one of the leaders of any party. They've all refused. What does that tell you?
Absence of accountability, isn't it? And my concern with the Royal Commission is the Crown Response Unit will cherry pick recommendations, which I don't know if you have that same concern.
Yeah, very much. It's like people don't. I was listening to the Unajagos talk about me at the hearing, and I said, my goodness, that one makes me so angry. Those lies, it makes me feel like I want to go and punch her on the nose. I had 2 armed police turn up at my house, telling me if I went up there I'd be arrested. I said, what the heck are you talking about? Yeah. They said you've threatened the Attorney General with violence. So you've taken it completely out of context, whoever's complained. I said it's a feeling, not an action. And I had to explain that to the Royal Commission. Got myself into quite a lot of strife. When you know, it's a natural thing to get angry when someone's sitting there and telling direct lies about you, telling me I didn't have to go to the UN, I could have gone to the police, when I've got a stack of emails to and from the police and different ministers begging them to reopen the case. You know,
it's tough. It's tough. I experienced that at the Royal Commission as well.
And you know, when you have armed police turn up and you've got children, and you think, you know, you're going to haul me away. Well, you don't know what you're talking about, because it's a, you know.
Interesting, the experience of armed police being there within a matter of minutes, let's say, or days, and yet you and Karilyn as kids stuck in Lake Alice, no one was coming. And even if you did try and report it, no one was responding. Or if they were responding, it was to Davo you, which is to deny that anything's happening, to attack you, reverse the order of the victim and offender. so that your credibility or your state of mind or anything you bring to it is naturally minimized and pushed forward as you can't possibly be telling the truth.
Yeah, that's what they did to us the whole way through.
It's
We
still
were always
happening.
made to feel the offender, not the victim. And
Yeah.
they
Mm.
helped the offender get off. And they should all be held to account for that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Malcolm, because at the end of the day, we were the ones that told the truth. We were the ones that had to fight for our rights, and we're the ones that are still getting kicked.
Yeah.
You know, no matter what. Yeah, just, oh. You know, I have no trust in whether it be government, whether it be police, whether it even be just my normal GP. I don't have the trust. It's like, no, you guys just don't get the picture.
Yeah. You know, I didn't. That's the problem too with ACC. They'll only take what you tell your GP, and I said, well, I won't tell my GP anything because I don't trust doctors.
Yep.
They won't take what you tell a counsellor. It took me probably 2.5 years to build up enough trust to start getting into the issues of just talking about the weather and family and you know, for an hour every week for about 2.5 years before I really got into the hard stuff. And that's only in the last 6 years that I've really started digging into this. And the more I do this and talk about what happened to people, you know, collecting the signatures from the Royal Commission I've never cried so much, and you know, with people that I don't even know, and they're telling me their stories, and but it's heartbreaking when they won't help to get the Royal Commission because they're just so afraid. And yeah, it was hard to convince a lot of people to go and speak to the Royal Commission, even after we got it. It was, yeah, I twisted a lot of people's arms and got them to talk to Mike Wesley Smith to do his documentary before the Royal Commission. And then I twisted their arm again to go to the Royal Commission. And he said, well, waste time. We've had the listening service. And I think, oh, maybe it is a waste of time, but we've got to try. We can't just give up. And then I got told I'd go and talk to them myself, and I thought, no, I can't do that. I can't. But I couldn't not do it with everybody else. I'd told, you know, you've got to do this because, yeah. So it was hard to get through what I had to get through, and since I was all the way up in Auckland, I was going to go up to Dargaville to see a brother I hadn't seen in 20 years. But I was so drained after speaking to them, I just come back home. I couldn't even, you know, go that little bit further.
I don't think people realise either that when you're trying to advocate for yourselves and for others who can't, you're not actually an adult. You're actually the age you were when all this was happening. It's incredibly triggering, and it can have you feeling exactly like you were back in those days.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It is.
It's huge, and it's just so misunderstood, and so people find it easier to turn away, which is, I think, what Neil was alluding to earlier about our horrendous abuse record and the fact we still don't have mandatory reporting in this country. So, Neil, I'm just wondering about the commonalities between what you're trying to do within the Dilworth case and what Malcolm and Karilyn are trying to achieve you know, at the stage they're at with Geneva? Where do you see the similarities?
We're all in the same waka, you know, and in terms of torture, there was certainly torture within Dilworth. I mean, the whole culture, you know, the culture of the place really fits the definition. And when the people that have the duty of care do it wrong and control the culture and create a culture of terror and fear, it's just pervasive. It's just there the whole time, and it just goes through different degrees of terror, fear, or sometimes I wasn't in fear or terror, but it could. Yeah, there are sometimes I did have moments. I remember where I did enjoy myself, but it can't make up for feelings of terror.
And I guess I'm thinking too really about the commonalities for all of you in terms of, you know, what you're coming up against as you're trying to get the state to be accountable, you know, for what has happened, and noticing where the blocks are with that, or where the rejection is of that, because it seems to be a bit of a thread I'm discovering.
Yeah, well, I think that's where it's good with advocacy groups that we kind of work together with this United Nations submission. There's 4 or 5 groups, and we're looking to really combine forces and make sure that we make the best use of time, so we don't double up on things, and so we have a little bit of a united front. And I think that's where a lot of the work that's been done. And Malcolm, you know, as a pathfinder, as a pioneer, you know, you've really paved a pathway for others from Lake Alice to sort of follow when their time is right, if that time eventuates. And for us as well, you know, we're on. There's a whole lot of people I feel I'm on the shoulders of, and that's, you know, Louise Nicholas and yourself, Gloria. You know, people that have pushed and hit the hurdles or hit the brick walls, and it's just time for someone else to have another go at bashing the wall, you know. And I think we all, and particularly with the United Nations, as I'm looking at this process, I see that a lot of people say, oh, the United Nations is a waste of time and nothing happens, and I'm looking at it going, no, actually, I think it's a really important pathway for citizens to have a bigger authority that can then put pressure on a state to do something when the state isn't doing the right thing. And
well, also brings world attention onto what's happening here, you know.
totally. And it's a world problem too. I mean, it's not just New Zealand. So as a global society, you know, we're looking, going, well, does this have any kind of impact on the Me Too movement? Or, you know, society is certainly shifting, and it seems that there seems to be a bit more momentum towards having a voice. There are stronger platforms to have a voice.
I think anything outside of mainstream seems to be willing and open to hearing. I guess, you know, one of the things I did wonder was, at the moment in the US, you may have heard of it, there's a movie that's just been released called The Sound of Freedom. And against all odds, it's been released into mainstream theatres, and it's actually about child sex trafficking. And of course, it's just beyond all expectation, has just blown up, and we will get that movie here. And one of the things I think is so valuable about that is because, you know, shock, horror, we have that in our country as well, as we all know, but it's just not accepted. It's a little bit like what you said earlier, Malcolm, that, you know, well, if you're going to say that again, you'll be arrested. It's almost like that. And I know as a survivor of child sex trafficking, yes, it exists. And yes, it's existed here since time began. So, you know, it's at some point, I think we need to be very alert, and the population needs to join us with this, because it's only through people saying this doesn't exist, or that what you guys at Lake Alice went through, that couldn't possibly have happened, that it does exist. So, you know, at some point we need that to be fully exposed. I'm not sure if we've still got Karilyn with us, but
Yes.
I'm still here.
there she. I wasn't sure if you were nodding off. I've been told I've got a voice.
No, I'm listening, ears pinned on.
All right, because I'm going to ask you some questions before we go into the closeout period. I just wanted to ask you, how many years were you at Lake Alice, Karilyn?
I was only there months. Fortunately for me, yeah. Unfortunately, I saw 99% of the rubbish that went through. You know, what they did do, what they didn't do, what they said never ever happened. And it's like, I can't believe how people are so easy to be so gullible that they don't think it happens. It's just crazy.
Well,
yeah.
It doesn't suit the narrative. And we know, you know, recently reports from Australia report that today, what is it, July 2023, if you stand a child and an adult in front of another adult, that other adult, 66% of adults will believe the adult over the child to today. So I don't know. I'm hoping what you said, Neil, is potentially happening, and that we're shifting more to perhaps believing the child, but we do know that evil exists because good people refuse to do anything. So we know that that's why evil exists. But I guess what you would have seen there, Karilyn, because sometimes for you, survivors or victims, whoever you like to be known, I'm trying to remember all of this, Malcolm, be impressed, is that, you know, sometimes it can be harder to watch a buddy of yours or a friend of yours at Lake Alice go through what they did. That can sometimes, we call that vicarious traumatization, and that can have a bigger impact because we couldn't do anything to help them. What was your what's your thinking around that? Same with you, Neil, at Dilworth. Yeah. Any thoughts on that, team?
Just the fact, being kids, not being believed, seeing what happened to the other kids in there, it puts you in a really rotten headspace. And when you're not constantly being reminded, but the police come in and say, oh, we're going to do an interview, oh, we're doing this, leave it alone for 10 years, come back and go, oh, we're going to do this, and it just keeps recycling, you know. And it's like, why did you not believe us like 30, 40, 50 years ago? Now we're having to go through the same process, the same thing, where it's the police telling us, oh, we need to sort this out. Oh, but you weren't believed before, but we might believe you now. That's never going to change. Never.
No. Well, I don't remember anybody from Lake Alice. Not the only person that was burned into my brain was Dr. Leeds. But when Victor Soderick was giving his statement to the Royal Commission, I couldn't name him to police, but I said, Paul, it was the person who was doing the what do you call it? Well, I lose words because of this brain damage.
The injections?
No, he was doing a therapy type sessions there. I said there was only one person doing it, so it is him. I asked MPs years and years ago to stop ex-Lake Alice staff practicing. Suderick had a government job to this day, working with children.
Yeah.
They knew.
Oh,
what
Rangatamariki.
was Lake Alice. Yeah, exactly. I went to the DHB and I told them what he'd done in Lake Alice. No one seems to take it on board that these people abused us and they're still in government jobs. And they said, well, we can't stop them because we haven't got the proof that they've done this offending. It's ridiculous.
Disgusting.
Just another don't believe us.
Well, we do in the whole survivor community. Malcolm, I'm referring to adult survivors who followed us, do, and you certainly have our empathy, and we stand by you strongly. And I know Neil does at Dilworth. So, guys, just as we're moving into closer, I've just got a question for you each. What would you like to see happen? What would be an outcome that you think is possible? Karilyn?
Look, at the end of the day, I'm not here for me. I'm not here for a lot of them. I'm here for the ones that have passed away and that need to be recognised because they never got their say. Their family lost them. Never, ever are they going to be believed or, just that's what I want. Someone to actually believe.
That resonates with me. I mean, I'm driven by the fight for justice for those guys that are not alive anymore, as well as those that are really damaged. That I'm in a fortunate position where I'm better able than some to stand up, put my hand up, and lead the charge. I want to protect tomorrow's children. I don't want, for the good of society and humanity, I just think we need to protect our children. It's just so obvious. And I also want accountability. I want those people that covered up for 50 years the abuse at Dilworth to be held accountable. Probably that's the biggest thing. We're waiting in the end of September. We'll be getting the report from the independent inquiry that Dame Sylvia Cartwright and Francis Joychild KC are doing. And we'll be looking at what the recommendations are from that. And we'll be looking at what evidence there is that may show that people were accountable and may potentially be charged with perverting the course of justice or something along those lines. And the cover-up at Dilworth is the most horrific thing to this day.
Still going on, Neil? The cover-up still is big as ever?
Alive and well, and just the stonewalling, and it's just to get anything, you just got to give so much of yourself. And I was only at Dilworth for 2 years, and this has been 5.5 years of push of everything that I've got to get this far, and I just hope it's worth it. And well, I hope I see a harvest of that, and but that's
what you
awesome.
Yeah. Malcolm, final word from you.
All right, well, this might sound mean-spirited, I suppose, but I'm in this for me, and I have to look after me because no one else has, and I haven't got the energy to fight for everybody or promise them something I can't deliver, but I will drag as many people with me as I can, but I can't physically do other people's battles because it's just so tiring to just function and do what I need to do to get my case across the line. And if I can drag others with me, well and good, but I can't worry about that because it's just too mentally draining to take other people's abuse on board with what I'm carrying of my own. And that's
So Malcolm, I just want to hold a mirror up because I don't believe you see the beautiful heart that you have. Yes, you have to look after yourself, but because of your tenacity, your courage, and your role modeling, you're already lighting the way. So please take that as a win.
Can I just thank Malcolm for reminding me that I'm actually doing this for me as well, and that I'm actually parenting my my inner child. I'm taking care of things that weren't taken care of then, and there's no better person to speak for that child than the adult child. So yeah, thanks, Malcolm.
That's awesome. Hey, just as we're going into close, team, please don't sign off, but I just want to say to our audience watching, I know that would have been challenging to see and to hear, but I make no apology for that. It's time for us to be really clear about the torture that existed at Lake Alice, the fact that we have two beautiful survivors / victims sitting with us today who once again are trying to put forward their story and their case so that they can be, I don't even think recompensed is the right word, but honoured, acknowledged, and looked after the way they should have been all those years ago. There's a few things as well. You know, the words test guinea pigs, the fact that these were beautiful children in New Zealand being treated this way is just abhorrent to me. But I think we're very lucky survivors watching because what we have are very brave, powerful, although they may not see it, including you too, Neil, survivors who are happy to step forward in their truth. So as we sign off tonight, I feel a bit emotional. My heart breaks for you guys, but I see you, I stand beside you, and I believe you.